there's something I couldn't quite wrap my head around for a long time. Women are 3 times more likely than men to experience common mental health problems like depression and anxiety. Young women are 3 times more likely than young men to experience post-traumatic stress disorder. Young women have a higher prevalence of ideals about not being alive anymore, which manifests into a more than doubled rate of self-harm compared to young men. And yet, despite all of this, the fact remains that men commit the act of unaliving themselves 3 times more than women. 3 times more. Why are we like this? Well, I can give a bit of an explanation, and it starts with the differences in our coping mechanisms. When men are struggling, they tend to use external coping mechanisms, such as substance abuse or aggression, and avoid seeking help due to society's expectations for them to be self-reliant and unexpressive. They're also less likely to access mental health services due to this societal stigma. This generally leads to women having better social support systems, which allows others to help prevent them from actually committing the act, whereas men fall into isolation more easily, increasing their vulnerability. There's certainly something to be said about the biological predispositions that may lead to things turning out this way. One could argue that the differences in hormones are the reason why men tend to exude their emotions through outwardly negative behaviors, while women's hormones cause them to turn inwardly. One might even say that it was the way men built our societies that led to the stigma around opening up and getting help, and that it's men's fault that they are the way they are right now. But to be so unsympathetic of men's issues and turn a blind eye to them, to me, is disgusting behavior. Regardless if men themselves are the biggest factor behind the creation of these types of societies, the men that are dealing with these issues right now, young men, had absolutely no say in the developments that happened throughout history that has led them to be more lonely, depressed, and suicidal than ever. But that's not even what I want to focus on in this video. Despite all the ways that our cultural beliefs and backgrounds have changed, one thing has remained constant through it all, and this thing is the very thing that men, despite all their struggles, could look forward to: being a provider for others. Both men and women are affected by societal pressures. That's undeniable. But I genuinely believe that women, due to everything I have gone over and due to how much emphasis has been placed on women's liberation in the past couple decades, which of course is not a bad thing, generally have a much easier time finding purpose and meaning outside of their traditional roles. Most of us have now heard the phrase, "I don't need no man," and while I do think that some women, when they reach an old age, are going to regret that sort of mindset, a lot of them will be able to derive meaning outside of being a mother and a nurturer, more than men will be able to derive meaning outside of being a father and a provider, at least with the way society is set up right now. I'm going to be completely honest with you. Until some drastic changes are made, I don't see this trend changing anytime soon. Please do not give up on finding a partner if that is what you want, but I do think more men are going to find themselves without one than in generations past. Men need a new purpose, one that transcends traditional masculinity but still satisfies our biological needs. As I've gone through 27 years of life, I've come to realize that there are very few things I actually need in order to feel like my life has meaning behind it. You don't need to get back at a world that has neglected you since you've been alive. You don't need to expel your anger on others who have done you wrong, and you don't need to hide from the bottomless pit of emotions that you've been taught to suppress. I know what you want. You want to be taken seriously. You want to feel like your efforts make a difference. You want your work to mean something. You want to feel what it's like to be acknowledged and loved by another person. And I want to tell you about my journey to show you how possible that can be without needing to fill the traditional role or becoming ultra successful. But first, we need to talk about health insurance. There are only 3 certainties in life as a man: death, taxes, and having trouble finding licensed healthcare providers who take your insurance. Same thing happened to me when I first moved to Austin. I was having these sort of groin pains and I was scouring Google, desperately trying to find a doctor that took my health insurance, but I never did. Luckily, my pain subsided on their own, but I really wish I would have had Zocdoc, the sponsor of today's video, back then to save me from that agony. Zocdoc has over 100,000 healthcare providers across every specialty, from mental health to dental health, eye care to skincare, and much more. And the best part is that you can filter for doctors who actually take your insurance, who are located nearby, who are a good fit for any medical need you may have, and who are highly rated by verified patients. So for example, if I needed to make a dentist appointment, I would put in the dentist specialty, I would filter it to near me and the insurance that I have, and I'd get all the appointment openings for the top rated doctors. And then I could choose a time that works for me. It's even possible to get same day appointments too on that platform, so please stop putting off your doctor's appointments just because you can't find anybody who takes your insurance. Use Zocdoc instead and go to the first link in my description, which is zocdoc.com/Cole to book some top-rated local doctors today. If I could use one word to define my life from the ages of 13 to 20, it would be disconnection. It was like I was watching someone else live my life from a third-person point of view. While my true self was caged within my body, forced to watch this entity possess it, it wreaked havoc on my life and made sure I never figured out who I was or who I was capable of being. To avoid confronting those truths, I would numb myself with hours of video games, talking to close friends over my Xbox 360, and when it would come time to shut it off and face reality, a reality consisting of 2 overdue assignments, 7 a.m. early morning classes, and failed love interests, I would lay awake at night, tossing and turning like I was running away from this caged self. How could I be so incompetent? Not one thing I tried. Not one was I ever exceptional at. And even if I did perform well, nobody was going to acknowledge it. My friends sure wouldn't. We had all signed a secret pact that we would never open up about anything negative we were feeling. Instead, we'd treat it as a joke or let each other joke around about it for us. Making light of my failures might have helped temporarily, but in the end, it always left me with an overwhelming feeling of disappointment. And I might not have realized it at the time, but now that I think about it, this was probably a huge reason for why I had such bad sleeping problems until I was 20. My own thoughts terrified me, and they had no proper way of letting themselves out. There was nothing I craved more than a genuine look in the eye from another, a pat on the shoulder, and to hear the words, "You matter." As I drifted into adulthood, through the numerous frat parties, the mornings I'd wake up with puke lying next to my bed, and the looming sense of obscurity from my daily weed addiction, I came to the stark realization that I hadn't changed the way I thought I would. 20 years of my life gone, and yet I still had no idea what I was doing. I was supposed to feel like a man, but I was nothing more than that small boy tossing and turning in his bed. Who was I going to talk to about this? Certainly not my friends. They didn't want to hear some sob story from an average crybaby about his problems. I already knew that deep conversations about life were taboo. Eventually, I did get my answer, but it wasn't from anybody else. It was from the man caged within. I can't give you exact details of why things unfolded the way they did, but a series of events started to expand my worldview and eventually led me to start to pursue the things that I had a lot of passion for, that I was always trying to escape or deny for the purpose of fitting in. And that started my confrontation with the caged man. He began by asking me a question. Who are you running away from? My anger spiked, and I tried to ignore it, so he tried again. I just saw you get pissed. You want to talk about it? I don't need to talk about anything, I said. I'll be fine. He gave me a sympathetic look. Look at what you're doing right now. Scrolling away through the endless drivel, valuing the lives created by others and using their standards to dictate what your life should look like right now, engrossing yourself in addictions of drama and negativity that only fuel your condemnation towards the world and make you feel valueless, drugging yourself with endless adult content to fabricate the feeling of being loved unconditionally. There's no rejection from the girl on the screen now, is there? Shut up, I replied. Aren't you supposed to be helping me? I needed to start with some tough love, he said back. Has anyone in your life ever been as real with you as I just was? Or has everyone just been avoiding saying the quiet part out loud? No response from me. Exactly. Well, I've got some news for you, my friend. That does not make you broken. It doesn't make you not worthy. You just haven't had anybody hold you accountable, respect you, love you, and genuinely want to see you succeed. That's what I'm here for. But you're me, I said back. None of that shit is convincing when it's coming from within me. It just sounds like a lie. And have you ever questioned why it's felt like a lie? My caged self said curiously. It feels like a lie because your life has conditioned you to believe that any act of kindness directed towards you must be in the form of a joke or insincerity, because nobody could possibly want to genuinely see you prosper. You expect the worst from others because you expect the worst from yourself. I mean, yeah, I said, but what's the point of trying in life if that prosperity won't be shared by friends or a lover? Now you're starting to get it, said the caged self, relieved. The truth is, life does not have much meaning if you can't share that joy with other people. All the progress in the world will never make up for a life empty of connections. Now think, my man, think. What does that mean for you? I guess it means that what I really want isn't more vanity or obscene riches or to get revenge on all the people who doubted me. I want to be the type of person that other people can lean on when they're going through difficult times. Exactly, said the caged man. That is what you really want. And no matter how far you think you've fallen, you can start to be that person today, right now. That is your purpose, to become competent and with that competency, impact the lives of others unconditionally. But the only way to begin the process of doing so is to first be that sort of person to yourself. That is why I exist. I still wasn't convinced yet. Okay, but doesn't that mean people will just take advantage of my kindness? What if the love I give is never reciprocated? It's not like it ever has been before. While that is true, the caged me replied, what does it matter? The people that will take it for granted are those who live in superficiality, who have not yet done the work you're about to embark upon. They too are chasing vanity metrics, numbing themselves to escape themselves, and are afraid of letting people in. This is nothing to be angry about. Their way of expressing thanks is a direct reflection of the depth of work they've done within themselves, and has nothing to do with you. While it may feel hard to find, the people you've wished would make their way into your life do exist, and they become much easier to find when you can master yourself and gain competency. If you only do good things for others because you expect good things in return, you will only attract the people who do good things for selfish reasons. And if I never find someone to love, and if I fail at what you're proposing here, what then? I said. All human beings need love, he replied calmly. We know real love when we feel it. We can see it in each other's eyes, in the way we speak, in the warmness of a hug. But there is no end goal that you think you need. You are only here to give love through your gifts, to not be afraid to open up and be vulnerable to others so that they may have the opportunity to feel comfortable enough to be vulnerable back to you. If you do this, you will experience love in those moments, even if it isn't from a lover. As for failure, effort is what determines the character of a man, not the achievements. If you should show up and do the difficult things this life requires in order to be a competent person, it does not matter how far you go. Your value in this world is invaluable when you become a shoulder to lean on and somebody who anyone can come to without judgment. After hearing his words, I was ready to let go of the part of myself that kept me safe over all these years. The part of myself that showed up to take my hand into unhealthy coping mechanisms that kept me from ever realizing the potential my caged self was about to show me. But in order to become someone new, you first must let go of who you currently are. And so, I jumped into my fear of uncertainty and change, and did just that. I began by simplifying my life as much as I could. Based on my caged self's teachings, the question I felt I needed to answer was, what is one thing I can look forward to every day before I go to bed that is difficult enough to improve my competency? I scrapped the idea that I needed to be absolutely perfect and accomplish everything that I set out to do in a given day, and instead focused on being consistently good. It felt uncomfortable at first. Usually when I set out to do something challenging, I would let fear or rage or vengeance guide me. That alone was enough incentive to want to create a better future for myself. But knowing my impact would positively inspire others, and perhaps even make them want to do more with their lives, became a fulfilling incentive that my true self, beyond its insecurities, was more aligned with. You see, a huge reason why many young men see no reason to progress in life is because the incentives of said progress are far less enticing now. Before we had a lot of time to think deeply about our lives and what we wanted from them, the incentive for any positive action was survival. If you built a shelter, you survived another day with less pain. If you hunted for your food early in the day, you could enjoy it at night and not starve. If you reproduced, you could use your children to help you survive and do laborious activities, and it felt good to do the act of reproducing too. You wanted to protect your family and provide for them and yourself, and you didn't really need any further incentive other than that. Then, when our basic needs were met, societies transformed the way incentives were instilled. You could have food and shelter made for you, but you'd have to get an education and work a traditional job to get the wealth necessary to be given those things. It was still difficult, but very viable depending on the state of the economy in the society you lived in. And even though those incentives technically do still exist, there's much less of a guarantee now. You could go through years of school and never find a job, or be an employee for years but never have enough money to move out. Your role in many modern jobs leaves you feeling empty, like you're just making money for a CEO who doesn't even care about you. You can't visually see and feel the type of progress and impact you are making at many types of these modern jobs, which diminishes the human connection aspect. And of course, on top of that, you now have less of a chance to find a significant other to build a life with. Young men want to work. They love the feeling of completing something worthwhile and reaping the rewards from it. But due to the incentives becoming unclear and the ease of access with which you can escape the difficulty and suffering that comes with battling for those incentives, it's left many more young men hopeless. Imagine a video game where you got no reward for leveling up your character. Would that be a game worth playing? I think this is the best analogy to use because many video games mirror many aspects in real life, and the best games keep you hooked and excited to come back to them by rewarding you for the time you spend getting better at them. But many young men are finding that life is coming with less and less of that sort of guarantee, and therefore, improvement can't just be about traditional incentives anymore. For me, that first something to look forward to every morning was the gym. The feeling of making my body more useful, to be able to lift heavier, run longer, and get immediate feedback in the form of changes in my physique were the first sparks of light within the cave that held my caged self. So long as I had that one thing to look forward to, an activity with measurable progress behind it that still posed as a challenge, I didn't need any more incentive than that, at least for the time being. I fell in love with the process of getting better, learning how to do exercises optimally and how to craft a diet that made building muscle easier. And I often recommend that you start with something that builds your physical competency first because it is without a doubt the highest ROI skill you can develop. You will sleep better, you'll have more energy, you'll have more clarity, and it will take you farther away from what I like to call modernity-induced trauma. Listen, I'm not one to advocate for calling everything that's bad that happens to you trauma. It's certainly a bit overkill these days with these self-diagnoses, but I am a firm believer that modern life detaches you so far from your natural state of being that many of you are in a similar state to the fight or flight response that many trauma survivors experience when they are re-experiencing what they went through in the past. Addiction expert and physician Dr. Gabor Mate explained it like this on a podcast.
We're born with certain needs, and given that our biggest need is that mutually responsive relationship with a nurturing environment, deprived of that, who doesn't get wounded? And in our society, very few people really get that optimal, nurturing, interactive, responsive environment because the parents are too stressed, because the community is no longer there to support the parents as it was throughout our revolution, because parents are themselves traumatized, because society creates a lot of strain and puts a lot of burden on people. So there's very few who are not wounded in this culture.
When you are so isolated all the time, not getting your needs met and hiding away from these hard truths in something that overstimulates you, your body produces tons of anxiety in the same way as it would if you were going through a life-threatening situation. That's the state you will frequently find yourself in if you don't make your physical and mental health a priority first. And that's probably why you don't feel naturally called to do the things that make life feel purposeful, that make you want to make progress, be kind, and help others. Through the process of taking care of my own body, I uncovered this reserve of untapped strength and energy that I could use to power the rest of my decisions of discipline. I started to really see the value in taking life seriously and continuously working towards just one or two things I could look forward to the next day when I put my head to the pillow. I took responsibility for creating that, and I knew that nobody was coming to save me. The only person that could save me was the part of myself that I kept caged for so long. The part of myself that exists as its own version within you. And so, through the work I put in, I realized this. I must become the parent to myself that I wished I had as a child. Now, I'd be lying to you all if I said that this quest for improving myself was enough to keep me feeling satisfied forever. It felt good to look forward to what I'd be doing on a daily basis, to say nice things to myself and encourage myself and genuinely believe what I was saying for a change. But it didn't help me escape the fact that I was still terribly lonely. There was nobody to share my accomplishments with. Nobody to use my newfound energy and strength to provide for, and nobody to talk to when I felt the urge to fall back into old habits, exert my anger and rage, and use external coping mechanisms. It's common to feel lonely sometimes as a human, like nobody understands what you're going through. And you might think the only way to cure those feelings is to find a lover or to drown yourself in digital pictures and videos of women, but I promise you, all you're really looking for is for someone to meet you eye to eye and say, I understand, and I'm here for you, and you matter to me. Community and social support was absolutely integral to our survival over thousands of years. We evolved with a need to connect with other human beings, and it is undeniably imperative to do so if you are to feel like this life has meaning. Men need to seek and create more social support systems for each other. They don't want to act like rage-induced assholes that are screaming for attention and getting angry at people on the internet in real life. They just want to let out their desires and insecurities without judgment, in the same way that my caged self had a conversation with my old self. That means sometimes you do get a bit of tough love. You have people in your life who aren't afraid to call you out on your bullshit, but those same people also give you a shoulder to lean on if you need it. I'm sure many men watching this video are rolling their eyes at me and calling me a pussy for thinking that we need anyone but ourselves, but life is fucking hard. Suffering and struggle and pain and heartbreaks and neglect is inescapable. We need to start shifting the narrative that it's weak and womanly to seek help from others, and encourage men to start trying to find and create the same sort of spaces that women have during times of struggle. Men, acknowledge the fact that you have emotions. You're not an inanimate object. You're just a dude who may not always be able to solely rely on themselves sometimes, even if your life has led you to create that belief. This, I believe, is a huge part of the next evolution for men that transcends traditional masculinity. It's about transforming numbness into awareness, awareness into acknowledgement, acknowledgement into appreciation, appreciation into positive action, and positive action into competency and healing. This is a huge reason why I started this YouTube channel. When I realized how much purpose and meaning life could have behind it if you start shifting the incentives and making progress on something you enjoy that makes life easier for your future self, I wanted to share these discoveries with others who might have been dealing with the same things. And in a way, it was my first real effort towards creating a sort of space that I've been trying to describe here for men. I became unafraid of facing the emotions and feelings that were previously seen as taboo amongst the men I was surrounded by in real life, and I was not afraid to be vulnerable. Many men are still under the impression that vulnerability is weakness, that if you reveal too much of yourself or be too nice, other people will see you as weak and try to take advantage of you. But it's almost always the opposite. If you are truly strong and accept who you are, it does not matter what people will try to do with your vulnerabilities. The negativity they give off will go through you like a ghost body, because you know that despite your insecurities and vulnerabilities, you have what it takes to conquer whatever life throws at you. Just as you have started to not impose judgment on yourself for feeling a certain way that isn't typically associated with manhood, you must not judge others for judging you. All you have to do is what any man who respects himself would do. Turn yourself away from them and distance yourself as much as possible. As I continued to do this more and gave people more kindness, I realized that kindness is the true strength. Being someone who people can rely on is strength. Being the type of man who can use his body and mind to its maximum capabilities is strength. And years later, I became the type of man I wished I had as a brother or father when I was growing up lost and depressed in my teens and early 20s. None of that requires you to fit the exact mold of the men of the past. There are so many more ways now to pursue something that may not be associated with traditional masculinity, but still helps you develop your creativity, curiosity, and confidence. And there's a new wave of men on the horizon who are waking up to the cultural values placed upon them from generations past that keep them from ever truly understanding their emotions. When we give ourselves the opportunity to understand these things and lift each other up and encourage one another to acknowledge that, yes, life is hard, but you're built for the struggle and the progress, that is when we start to create a world in which men no longer feel so inclined to cope externally, lash out at others for the confusion surrounding their feelings, and eventually take their own lives. Whatever stage of life you're at, you can be that man today. That is your new purpose. All you have to do is start to look at the caged man within. I appreciate and love you guys, even though I don't actually know a lot of you, but I love you platonically. And if you want to connect with other like-minded people who are interested in this type of stuff, who will not judge you for whatever you want to open up about, then you can check out my free self-improvement community, which is linked in the description below. And if you want to look at my self-improvement videos, they might help you a lot. Check out the playlist of all my self-improvement videos. Everything I have done to become the man I am today is documented in this playlist. Go check it out. Thank you guys for watching.